The heartwarming moment that nearly cost me my family. If he sleeps here tonight, don't expect me back tomorrow, Mark whispered across the table as candles sputtered and our daughter pushed peas into a lake of gravy. My fork hovered. I am Grace, 36, an ER nurse who has seen worse than bad timing and tougher men than my husband. I invited Tom Alvarez, the quiet veteran I treated on shift, to share Christmas dinner because no one should eat alone in December. Tom sat with shoulders tucked small in Ruth's linen chair, hat folded neat on his lap like a promise he wouldn't break. He thanked our daughter for the paper star she taped to his cup. Ruth, the queen of delicate things, smiled a brittle smile and asked me aside. This is not how families do holidays, she said. People talk. I said we'd manage. She lifted her chin at the silver brooch pinned to her silk. It was my mother's. Some symbols matter. I could list what matters to me. Keeping people breathing, knowing their names, trusting that kindness costs less than regret. But I also knew the ledger I might be writing in permanent ink. Mark hates surprises. He hates risk with our money, and he fears danger at our doorstep. Tom ate slowly, careful, every bite small. He told one story about a snowstorm in '79 and broke off before the ending like it belonged to someone else. My phone buzzed with the neighborhood group. Reports of strangers combing porches 2 streets over. I silenced it. I set another roll by Tom's plate and felt Ruth stare like a cold draft under the door. I am not reckless. I locked the pills at work and the windows at home. Yet I brought a man from a gurney to our table because something in his yes ma'am had sounded like a hand reaching up from a well. I looked at my family, at the star on the cup, at Mark's jaw. I would sleep on the couch if I had to. I would keep my marriage, protect my daughter, and keep faith with my patient. Then Ruth touched her brooch, and the clasp sighed. Who will my husband believe when the proof points away from kindness? Mark and I met in a cafeteria line when I was a nursing student, and he hauled freight at night. He liked that I spoke straight. I liked that he noticed when someone's hands shook. We built a life on coupons, secondhand furniture, and the rule that we told the truth even when it hurt. Ruth entered our marriage like a scented envelope, the kind you cannot forget once opened. She kept photographs by decade and china by mood. She also kept a running commentary on my bleeding heart, said with a smile that felt like a pat down for mistakes. You can't rescue everyone, she'd say. There's a difference between compassion and carelessness. I rescue who shows up, I'd answer. Then I clock out. Mark would stand between us, hands up, peacemaker. He grew up in Ruth's orbit, where image protected survival. His father left when he was 8. Mark learned early that security is a list you can laminate. Paid bills, locked doors, no surprises. The last put down came 3 weeks ago after I used overtime to stock hygiene kits for discharge patients. Ruth saw the soap and socks and muttered, "Cute hobby. Do you also invite them over?" Mark's mouth tightened. He supported me in private. In public, he prized calm. I get where he's coming from. The ER teaches you that you can drown trying to save a swimmer. You throw lines, not yourself. But tonight felt different. A holiday is a line. Tom had reached for it without asking. At dinner I set small comforts. Gravy warm, music low, questions gentle. Tom answered with soft yes. When our daughter asked, "Favorite cookie?" he said, "Molasses, ma'am," and embarrassed himself with the ma'am. Ruth's eyes flicked to the door like a weather vane catching a storm. She touched the silver brooch and told the familiar story. It belonged to her mother, worn each Christmas, saved once by pawning and redeeming, a symbol that taught who we are. I respect symbols. I also respect people who don't have a coat. Later, as plates clinked and coffee steamed, Mark brushed my elbow by the sink. We agreed on boundaries, he murmured. I said, one night. He said, one night becomes a pattern. I said, maybe patterns become the person you want to be. He turned away. Tonight, my values will cost me something I'm scared to lose. The first red flag came disguised as sweetness. Ruth offered Tom seconds, and then drifted toward the mantel where the family photos live. I watched her fingers touch frames, avoid a certain one, then return to it like she couldn't help herself. The photo shows Mark at 8 with a missing tooth and Ruth beaming beside him, broach a small comet at her collar. She looked at Tom and looked at the photo and smoothed her silk. After pie, I took trash to the bin. On the porch, cold bit the seams of my coat. The neighborhood group still pinged, blurry photos of strangers dragging a cart, comments building like hail. I typed, Please be kind, and deleted it. Tom appeared at the doorway. Thank you for the meal, he said. You don't owe me a bed. I can go. You're safe here, I said. We have a couch and extra blankets. He lowered his voice. People get nervous around me. I know the look. I know the look too, I said. I've been on your side of it more times than they know. When we returned inside, Ruth was telling our daughter that every family has traditions. She touched the brooch. Some things we keep to remember who we are. I have a habit of noticing small things. A medicine cup moved, a chart time that doesn't align. In the kitchen, the drawer we keep envelopes in wasn't closed all the way. A pawn shop flyer sat on top. I had tossed it days ago. Tom's hands shook as he rinsed his plate. I can help with dishes, he said. Mark said, no, I've got it, in a tone that meant don't touch anything else. I felt heat rise in my neck. I wanted to pull Mark aside and say, see him as I do. I wanted to tell Ruth that symbols carry weight only if we carry people first. I did none of it because I was trying to keep peace in a house where peace was a moving target. Then came the second red flag, a neighbor's post about a man in a dark coat seen near a small white house, holiday lights, red door. Ours. I locked the side gate. I checked the porch cam. The feed showed static snow. Whose story will win when fear finds the easiest target tonight? We gathered for a board game because families try normal when normal is slipping. Ruth excused herself to the bathroom. 10 minutes later, the house went soft as a church. No clatter, only that candle hiss. When she returned, her hand flew to her collar. My brooch, she said, voice clipped thin. Grace, it's gone. At first I thought she was joking. Ruth weaponizes drama when bored. But her face paled to the color of old milk. She lifted napkins, checked under her chair, patted the carpet like searching for a pulse. Mark stood so fast the card slid. Did anyone leave the table? Ruth looked at Tom. It was not a long look, but it was heavy. Tom rose, palms out. I didn't touch it, ma'am. I swear. Our daughter called from the hallway. It's shiny. Maybe it fell. She crawled under the table, hopeful, and came up empty. I went for the porch cam. The screen jangled static. The neighbor group had already sprouted a blurry photo. A silhouette on our block dragging a suitcase. Comments bred theories. Probably casing. Call the police. Lock your children. Ruth took my wrist. Grace, she said, I want to trust your judgment, but you brought him here. This is on you. Mark's eyes were hurt and hard together. Can we check Tom's bag? He asked, voice low. Tom lifted the canvas pack he'd tucked by the door. Please, he said. I opened it. Blanket, socks, a chipped mug, pill bottle with VA pharmacy label, a sealed envelope of discharge papers I recognized by format. No brooch. Ruth pressed 2 fingers to her temple like pain would absolve someone. It's worth more than money, she said. It's my mother. I wanted to hold her hand and tell her we'd find it. I wanted to hold Tom's hand and tell him I would not let this happen to him. I held the table instead. Mark's phone buzzed with a text from a neighbor. I saw a man at your door at 8:10. The timestamp stung. The room felt smaller, the air brittle as Christmas glass. My guest's dignity or my mother-in-law's trust? Who will I betray? We tried another search. Coats, pockets, chair cushions, the bathroom floor. Nothing. Ruth called the pawnshop flyer an omen, which made me want to scream. Tom stood by the door as if proximity proved innocence. He looked tired in a way that had nothing to do with age. Mark pulled me into the hallway. We can't keep him here, he said. Not with the cam out and that post. It doesn't make sense, I said. He's been in sight except when Ruth left. I'm asking for our family, he said. Our daughter. I'm asking you to choose us. I felt the ground tilt. I thought I was. Ruth appeared, coat on, purse clenched. I'm calling the police, she said. This is theft. Tom lifted his hands again, palms up to a sky that wouldn't answer. I can go, he said to me. It's fine. It was not fine. Our daughter threw her arms around Tom's waist. Stay, she said in a small voice. He patted her head and gave me a look that asked me not to make it worse. I walked him to the porch with 2 blankets and a paper bag of leftovers. The cold slapped my face. The neighborhood thread chimed. Lockdown tonight, folks. Another chimed. Saw him leave Grace's, heading south. Tom straightened. Thank you for dinner, he said. I'll be all right. You shouldn't be out, I said. At least take a ride to the shelter. I have places, he said, gentle. Merry Christmas. When I came back in, Ruth's mouth set hard. You chose a stranger over your family, she said. Mark didn't defend me. He stared at the floor. I laid blankets on the couch. I thought of patients whose names I never learned. I thought of Ruth's brooch and the way legends bind us tighter than facts. I thought of Mark's ultimatum. I wanted to ask the room for a truce and knew I'd get silence. Ruth looked at her phone. The neighbor thread praised her vigilance. If the police recover it, she said, they'll want a statement. I stared at the ceiling until the plaster blurred. In the morning, will my home still feel like mine after this choice? I woke up sore from the couch and from the silence. Mark brewed coffee without our usual chatter. Ruth sat at the table scrolling the neighborhood group as if it were scripture. Our daughter built a fort under a chair, whispering to the stuffed bear Tom had complimented. I made a list. Lists calm me when chaos tries to be loud. 1. Timeline last night. 2. Who touched what and when. 3. Cameras, receipts, texts, bank alerts. 4. Tom's whereabouts post-dinner. 5. Ruth's route to the bathroom and back. I asked for the porch cam again, power cycled it, and captured only static. I opened the neighbor group on my phone. A post at 8:10 claimed a shadow on our porch. At 8:24, a blurry suitcase. At 8:37, a warning about an older male in a dark coat. The comments threaded fear with certainty like it was knitting a fact. I texted Carla, the charge nurse, to confirm my shift messages from the VA social worker about Tom. Yes, discharged December 24th at 17:12. Voucher for 2 nights and used, she replied. I called the shelter. Tom checked in at 9:05 p.m., said the clerk, and left at 9:24 of friends. My stomach turned. Friend where? Are you really doing this? Ruth said. We all saw what we saw. We saw fear, I said evenly. Fear is chatty and often wrong. Bank notifications showed a small purchase on our card at 8:48, milk and batteries from the corner store. Mark had run out, which meant he was gone during part of the search. Not suspicion, just data. I added it to the list. Ruth flinched. You're accusing me, she said. After all I've done for this family. I'm building a timeline, I said. I want the truth for all of us. I messaged the pawn shop, a place called Harbor Loans, to ask if any silver brooches had come in overnight. An auto reply promised a return call. Then I saw it. A text Ruth sent at 7:41, going to freshen up. At 7:52, a text from her to a number labeled Lydia Hare. Can you talk? I didn't know Lydia. If the timestamps crack our story, what else will split open today? Harbor Loans called at 10:03. A man with a careful voice said, We don't give details without police, but I can tell you what's legal to tell. I explained we were trying to find a family heirloom and that a guest had been accused. He sighed like he'd heard this before. We took in several items last night, he said. One was a silver brooch with a floral pattern, hinged pin. Ticket issued at 8:32 p.m. Seller provided ID, signed initials, standard stuff. Initials? I asked, pen ready. RB, he said. That's all I can say. Ruth's maiden name is Bennett. My pen dented the page. I asked the shelter for camera confirmation of Tom's check-in. They couldn't share footage without police, but the clerk read the log. Tom arrived at 9:05, carried a canvas pack, declined a bed, asked about bus routes, left at 9:20 saying, I've got a place to be. I walked through last night again. Ruth left the table around 7:40 and returned by 7:55. She told me at 8 o'clock that tradition matters. At 8:12 the neighbor posted the porch silhouette. At 8:32 a.m. brooch hit the pawn counter under initials that match Ruth's maiden name. A chill that wasn't weather moved along my spine. Mark came in with groceries, cheeks flushed. I needed air, he said. He watched me draw arrows on the timeline. Grace, please. This is turning into a trial. Trials assemble facts, I said. We're swimming in opinion. Ruth hovered, arms crossed. What are you writing? Times, I answered. Movements. Things that either add up or don't. I remember when I last touched the brooch, Ruth announced. At 7:50, the bathroom mirror. But my phone showed a 7:52 text she sent from the same room. A mirror can't be in 2 steps at once. I texted Officer Diaz, who's worked security shifts at our hospital, and asked for advice on documentation. He replied, write it clean. Don't accuse. If needed, I can mediate. I looked at my daughter's fort and at the empty chair where Tom had sat. If I reveal this lead, will my marriage crack along the fault? Officer Diaz met me in the precinct lobby at lunch. Gray scarf, coffee, measured tone. You did right calling, he said. Let's see what we can confirm without blowing up Christmas twice. He pulled the shelter supervisor aside. After forms and a promise that no one was being arrested from a family dinner, we watched the grainy CCTV. At 8:15, Tom walked into frame carrying his pack. At 8:28, he bought a coffee from the vending machine. At 8:33, the timestamp blinked and he was still on the same bench, talking to another vet. Across town, at 8:32, a silver brooch under initials R.B. hit Harbor Loans. Diaz nodded at the screen. That's your guest's alibi, he said. He can't be in two places. Back at Harbor Loans, Mr. Chin allowed exactly what the law allowed. He showed us the pawn ticket with most fields blocked. Ticket number 11832. Initials R.B. A partial address, cut off. A signature in a hand that shook. The pattern tugged at me. Ruth has tiny tremors when anxious. She hides them with rings and sleeves. I pictured her mirror ritual, the 7:52 text to Lydia Hare, the neighbor's 8:12 silhouette, and this 8:32 ticket. What's the likelihood of another R.B.? I asked. Mr. Chin lifted a palm. Could be many, he said. But anxiety makes people careless with time. I stepped into the winter light and breathed until my breath slowed. Tom was innocent of the brooch. That was the good simple part. The hard part was going home to the people I loved with a truth they didn't want. I called Mark. We need to talk with Diaz present, I said. It's cleaner that way. His silence lasted long enough to count. Grace, he said, are you trying to humiliate my mother? I'm trying to find the truth without breaking us, I said. Help me do it right. He exhaled ragged. I'll come. I texted Ruth to meet at the pawn shop so Mr. Chun could explain process neutrally. She replied, you're cruel. I put my badge back on for my shift. The stitching held. If kindness clears Tom, will justice crush what's left of home? I wrote the plan on a yellow pad because pins slow panic. Step 1. Confirm what I could confirm without anyone losing face. I had two pillars. Harbor Loans ticket number 11832, December 24th, 8:32 p.m. Initials R.B. And the shelter CCTV showing Tom on a bench from 8:15 through 8:33. Step 2. Ask Officer Diaz to mediate a calm meeting so our family didn't turn a kitchen into a courtroom. Step 3. Invite Mark and Ruth, not to accuse, but to lay out time like stepping stones. I texted both. Can we meet at Harbor Loans at 3 p.m.? Mr. Chun will explain procedure. Diaz will keep it civil. Mark replied, okay. Ruth wrote, this is beneath me. Then, 5 minutes later, fine. I breathed and added step 4, a script. The yard trained me to say hard things gently. We all care about the truth. We agree to facts first, feelings second. I wrote, I'm sorry for the hurt. I want Tom cleared and Mom's brooch back. My hands shook, a mirror of Ruth's. Before leaving for the shop, I checked the porch cam again. Static fizzed. I unplugged it, waited 10 seconds, plugged it back. The feed snapped alive with a backlog of cached clips, all time-stamped late. One blurred figure at 7:38 moving across our path. A second clip at 8:06 of Mark stepping out for milk. A third at 8:58, the porch empty. The 7:38 figure had a coat and a scarf. Height matched Ruth more than Tom. I saved the clips to a thumb drive like I would preserve an ECG strip. I wasn't hunting for guilt. I was building safety rails for the truth. On the drive to Harbor Loans, the radio played a carol my mother loved. She used to say charity begins at home and doesn't end there. At the light, I stared at the crosswalk, counting to 5 like I teach anxious patients. Breathe in for 4, hold for 4, out for 4. My phone buzzed. Tom, you don't need to defend me. I'm used to leaving quietly. I wrote back, dignity shouldn't be a luxury, Tom. Please trust me. If they refuse the facts, where will our family go from here? Mr. Chun had cleared a small office with 2 chairs and a glass-top desk. Mr. Diaz stood near the door, not in uniform, a quiet anchor. Mark arrived first, jaw tight, eyes searching my face for a map he could trust. We're here to lower heat, I said, not to win. Ruth swept in wearing a fresh blouse, but the same wounded expression. She didn't sit. This entire circus is your doing, she said. You opened our door to chaos. Mr. Chin folded his hands. Ma'am, we will discuss process only. I can neither accuse nor reveal private data beyond the law. Diaz nodded. We'll stick to times and steps. I began, hands on the yellow pad. Ticket number 11832, 12/24 at 8:32 p.m. Initials, RB. Brooch description matches yours. Silver, floral hinge. Shelter log places Tom there from 8:15 to 8:33. Our porch cam, after reset, shows a figure at 7:38 moving across the path with a scarf. Ruth's eyes flashed. So you think I pawned my own mother's brooch? I chose each word like a measured dose. I think fear and embarrassment warp memory. I also know predatory loans hook people by the throat. If something happened, we can fix it without shame swallowing us. Mark's head turned slowly toward his mother. Mom. She stared at the glass desk, then at the door, calculating exits. I went to get cash for tips, she said. The holiday envelope. I realized my purse was light. I panicked. At 7:38? Diaz asked. I don't traffic in your back door, she snapped. Mr. Chen lifted a thin folder. The seller will be able to redeem the item within a set window if they bring matching ID and ticket, he said neutrally. If police request footage, we comply. Silence pooled. Ruth's breath hitched. Mark looked at me like he wanted to reach across years and hold on. Mom, he said, softer. Did you have a loan? Ruth pressed the bridge of her nose until white showed. Not a loan, she whispered. A favor that grew teeth. If she tells the truth now, can we stand what it asks of us? Diaz's voice stayed kind. We'll keep lines short. Yes or no where possible. He held his pen above a blank form. Ruth, did you visit Harbor Loans last night? Her chin lifted, pride a final thin shield. Yes, she said, and the room exhaled with her. Did you sign a ticket for a silver brooch at approximately 8:32 p.m.? She closed her eyes. Yes. Did anyone force you? No, she said. I was afraid. Mr. Chen explained redemption windows like reading a recipe. Dates, steps, no judgment. Ticket number 11832 can be redeemed within 30 days by the signer with matching ID, he said. There is also a 15-day hold before resale due to state regulations. Diaz added, if a report is filed for a stolen item, footage becomes part of the file. But if the original owner pawned it, there is no theft. Mark's shoulders dropped as if a backpack he'd worn since childhood had slid off for a moment before finding its way back. Why didn't you tell us? He asked Ruth. Because I was ashamed, she said. The credit card teaser raid ended. I told myself a small pawn was smart. I thought I'd buy it back before anyone noticed. She looked at me with something like apology and accusation braided together. When you brought him, Tom, I said. His name is Tom. When you brought Tom, my fear found a stranger's face, she finished. And I let it. I felt anger and relief fight in my ribs. Anger at the harm, relief at the clearing. We need to make this right, I said. First to Tom, then to the truth in our house. Diaz asked if we wanted to file a note in the neighborhood group to stop rumors. Ruth flinched at the word public, but nodded. Mr. Chen placed the thin folder on the desk. You can redeem today if funds are ready, he said. Mark opened his wallet as if intention could inflate it. He looked at me. We'll figure the money, he said. But how do we fix trust? If we apologize in public, will our private wounds grow or heal? We walked out into cold that smelled like iron and pine. Ruth wrapped herself tighter and asked for a minute. On the curb, she finally said the words that changed the air. I pawned my mother's brooch to cover a high-interest loan. She spoke without theatrics. It started small when my roof leaked in October. I hated asking you. I told myself I'd surprise you by solving it. Instead, I sank. She stared at the traffic light as if it might judge. I accused Tom to protect the story I told myself about myself. Mark's eyes glossed. Mom, he said, you don't have to be perfect for me to love you. She nodded like that felt unfamiliar. I dialed Tom. He didn't answer. I texted, please meet us at the shelter lobby at 4. We owe you more than words. Then I typed a draft for the neighborhood group and handed Ruth my phone. Your voice, I said. She read, hands trembling. Last night, I reported a missing heirloom and implied a guest was responsible. That was wrong. I pawned it, and fear made me reckless with blame. Please extend the grace I withheld. She swallowed and pressed post. Comments began, swift and mixed, surprise, sympathy, a few cruel as glass. I asked Diaz for a quick photo of the harbor loan sign and ticket number to attach for context. He nodded. Mr. Chun processed the redemption with brisk care. The brooch glinted in a little cloth pouch like nothing had happened to it. Everything had. On the drive to the shelter, Mark squeezed my hand at a red light. "I'm sorry for last night," he said. "I let fear talk louder than you." I said, "Me too. I chose a good thing without building you a bridge to it." Our daughter would need an explanation in words a child can carry. I would write that script next. In the shelter lobby at 4, Tom stood near the bulletin board, posture careful. He saw us and started to step back. I held up the pouch. "If he refuses our apology, how do I carry the weight home?" "Tom," I said, stopping before space felt like a wall. "We're here to say we were wrong." Ruth lifted the pouch with both hands like an offering at church. "I blamed you to hide my own mistake," she said, voice low and even. "I am sorry." Tom looked at Mark, then at Diaz, then at me. "I've been blamed before," he said. "By bosses, by a judge, by my own mirror. I learned quiet, then I learned to leave." He glanced at the pouch and back. "This time you brought the truth to me. That's not nothing." He didn't take the brooch. It wasn't his to take. He took the apology by nodding once, a soldier's acceptance. Diaz asked if Tom wanted a formal clearing statement for the neighborhood group. "I don't live on that app," Tom said, "but I take a ride to the VA clinic tomorrow and a list of day jobs." Mark cleared his throat. "I can do the rides," he said, "and I can ask at the warehouse." Ruth surprised me and herself. "I will write you a reference," she said. "I was a bookkeeper. I can still write a letter." Tom considered the offer. "A letter that says I showed up on time for Christmas dinner," he said, almost smiling. We laughed in a way that didn't erase pain, but made room around it. Back home, I posted a follow-up explaining the redemption and the timestamps. It drew out more kindness than I expected. A few commenters doubled down on fear, as fear does. I turned off notifications and made hot chocolate for our daughter while Mark repaired the porch cam cable with new patience. At bedtime, I sat on the edge of the couch where I'd slept and realized I was tired in my bones. Mark draped a blanket over my shoulders and whispered, "Stay in our bed tonight." We lay awake a long time, hands touching, words slow. "We need rules," he said, "and we need to keep the parts of us that are good. If our rules fail next time, will we still choose each other again?" We built boundaries the way you build a ramp, slowly, strong enough to carry weight. We agreed on 3 rules and wrote them on the fridge like a recipe. 1. Generosity happens in daylight and in pairs. No surprises at the door, at least a text first with a plan. 2. Safety steps are not a judgment. Lock the side gate. Charge the porch cam. Count it as care, not suspicion. 3. Money talks early. If anyone in the family is sinking, we say it before the water is at our throats. Ruth balked at that last one, then nodded because her hands had stopped shaking once we named things. We helped her call the lender and set up a repayment plan with a nonprofit counselor. No more snowballing fees, no more secrets. She handed me the pawn ticket as a talisman of what not to repeat. For Tom, we made help practical. Mark drove him to the VA clinic at 9 a.m. sharp. I packed a small bag with socks, a phone charger, a bus card, and a printed list of day labor postings. Ruth drafted a reference letter that told the truth without varnish. He was respectful at our home, on time for his appointment, grateful without asking, and he endured unfair suspicion with dignity. Tom read it twice and folded it like a map. At dinner, we left one chair empty, not out of absence, but to remind ourselves that a table grows by chairs, not locks. Our daughter taped her paper star to the window, so it watched the street. "In case someone needs light," she said. We told her the story in simple words. How grown-ups get scared, how sorry matters, how telling the truth can feel like jumping into cold water and coming up clean. That night, as I set out tomorrow's scrubs, my phone pinged with a warehouse number. A supervisor had seen Mark's message. If Tom could lift 40 pounds, he could have a trial shift. I texted Tom and waited for the 3 dots. If this job falls through, can Hope survive another bruise this week? On New Year's Eve, Tom showed up at the warehouse in a borrowed jacket and the factory new boots Mark insisted on buying after Ruth argued, and then contributed half. The supervisor checked boxes like a medic with a chart. Tom lifted. Tom stacked. Tom listened like every instruction was a rope thrown his way. At lunch, he called me from a break room that hummed under fluorescent lights. "I don't want to jinx it," he said, but they said come back Monday. I held the phone and felt my chest loosen the way it does when a heart rhythm snaps back into line. That afternoon, we took a photo, Tom, Mark, and me by the loading dock, Diaz off to the side, giving a thumbs up like a dad. Ruth wasn't in the picture, but she sent a text that read, "Molasses cookies are cooling." I smiled because Tom had named them his favorite. At midnight, we stood on our porch under week fireworks, 3 mugs of cocoa and 1 empty chair. The brooch lay in Ruth's jewelry box where it belonged, but it had lost its power to tell us who we were. We had words for that now: boundaries, repair, courage that chooses both safety and kindness. I told the camera in my head what I would tell the folks watching our story online. Evidence matters. Timestamps keep families from burning kindness as a witch. If you're older and tired, keep the terms simple. Write the dates, the amounts, the steps you'll take before fear writes them for you. In our kitchen, the paper stars still clung to a cup. We had not saved the world. We had saved one small circle of it by telling the truth, even when it made our throats ache. I slid under the covers beside Mark, our feet bumping like 2 kids on a couch, and I breathed the ordinary breath of a house that had learned to stand again. Will we remember this mercy when the next hard choice knocks at midnight?